You know, students, we have just finished a chapter on the age of industrialization. Now we begin with the third chapter, the post industrial age. Post industrial means after industrialization. The Industrial Revolution brought about a big change in many spheres of life. It brought about a change in the economic sphere. Economic sphere means the business sphere, the sphere in which money is involved. A change was also brought about in the political sphere and in the social sphere of life. Social sphere means the way of living of the people. Way of living means the people no longer continued with the old agricultural style of living where they cultivated crops and earned their living. Now the whole way of living had changed. There were different transformations that took place due to the Industrial Revolution. A transformation means a change. There were a lot of changes, that means there were a lot of transformations that took place due to the Industrial Revolution. The first very important change that took place during this Industrial Revolution was the change from an agricultural society to the factory system. The factory system led to urbanization. Urbanization means the setting up of new cities. New cities came up during this time because people migrated from the villages to new places in search of jobs because the industries were mostly set up in the cities. Since the people migrated from the villages to the cities in search of jobs, there was overcrowding in the cities. Overcrowding means there were too many people in the cities. The cities were packed with people. So people, when they came to the cities, they had to live in very small houses with no proper washrooms, in very unhygienic conditions. Unhygienic means in very dirty conditions. The two important cities that came up in England during this time were Manchester and Leeds. The factories in these cities employed both the skilled as well as the unskilled laborers. Skilled laborers were those who knew a particular job very well. For example, spinning. There were some who used to do the spinning in the villages, so they knew how to spin and weave cloth. That is why these kind of laborers were known as skilled laborers, whereas there were others who worked as laborers in the farms. These people never knew the skilled jobs, so they were employed as unskilled laborers. The unskilled laborers were paid low wages. Wages means low salaries. The cities were a perennial source of employment. Perennial means a continuous source of employment for the landless laborers. The laborers became landless because the landlords had taken away their lands. Since many people came to work in the cities, many factories were set up. This led to a new system in England known as the capitalist system. The capitalist was a very rich person, or these capitalists were very rich people who were the owners of the factory. During this time, there were two classes of people that came up. One was the capitalist and the other was the labor class. Capitalists were the ones and laborers were the ones who worked in the factories. The laborers were given a very small wage, that means they were given very less salary, while the capitalist made all the money he could. Nobody said anything to these capitalists because the government always was in favor of the capitalist. So, even if the laborers complained about their problems to the government didn't bother about the difficulties of the laborers. During this time, the families were very badly affected. During this time, there was so much of poverty in the family that not only the men but even the women and the children had to go to work. So the families were shattered. Shattered means they were lost. The children did whatever they wanted to do. Some of them went to work, some of them were at home, and during this time there was a problem of street children that came up. The children were totally neglected as their parents went to work. During this time, there were a lot of books that were published which told stories about the bad things, the evil things that happened during this post-industrialized age. One of the very famous books of this time was Oliver Twist, a famous novel written by Charles Dickens. During this post-industrial age, the concept of leisure changed. What is leisure? Leisure means free time. How people used their free time during the post-industrial age was much different from how they used it before the Industrial Revolution. In the post-industrial age, people started reading a lot of books. Earlier, books were read only by the rich people because only the rich people could afford to buy books. Now, with the invention of the printing press, many people started reading books because books became cheap and were readily available. The Chinese invented the art of printing, but it was John Gutenberg who invented the printing machine in Germany during the 15th century. During this time, not only books but even newspapers were being printed on a large scale, which helped to spread a lot of ideas to a lot of people. The newspaper helped people to know what was happening in their own country as well as what was happening in other countries. Dear students, we will continue with the rest of the topic in the next lesson. Thank you. Due to the invention of the printing press, there was a circulation of newspapers. These newspapers acted as a tool to spread ideas among the people as well as the nations. Even in the colonies like in India, the British colony, they used the newspaper to spread nationalist ideas. In India, the newspapers played a very important role in spreading the nationalist ideas, and these newspapers served as a platform for various leaders of India to share and express their views and make the people of India aware about how the British were exploiting India. Journalism in India began during the colonial rule. Journalism means the publication of newspapers. Many of the educated Indians contributed towards journalism in India. The contribution of Rajaram Mohan Roy is noteworthy. Noteworthy means it is worth remembering. He published 3 journals in the first half of the 19th century. One among these journals is the Samvad Comedy. This journal remained in circulation for a long period of time. Remained in circulation means people would read it much more than any other journal. The journals of Rajaram Mohan Roy had gained a lot of publicity because they contained articles that gave a real picture of the conditions of Indian society during the British rule. This marked the beginning of Indian journalism in the colonial world. The newspapers were also used by the commercial class to advertise their products, which had helped them to increase their sales because the newspapers were read by a large number of people. So, information about their products would reach to many homes. The advertisements were also preferred by the publishers because it was a source of income to them. You know that when an advertisement is given in the newspaper, the person who gives the advertisement has to pay for it. So the newspaper agency earns some money. In the post-industrialized age, a number of publishing houses were established in Europe and in many other countries. These publishing houses started publishing novels written on different subjects, ranging from fiction to social themes. In Europe, from the 16th century onwards, novels on subjects such as Charles Dickens, Oliver Twist, Jonathan Swift's Gulliver Travels, H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man, E.M. Foster's The Aspects of Novel were widely read by the people. So these were some of the books that were read a lot by the people of the post-industrial age. There were also some women authors. Women authors are women who were the writers of novels, like for example Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. These women had become famous because of their writings, and these novels depicted the changing life of women in society. In India, writers like Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, the book written by him was Anandamath, Mulk Raj Anand, who wrote Coolie, R.K. Narayan wrote The Malgudi Days, Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore wrote the Gitanjali, which is a collection of poems. These novels depicted the condition of society in India. The post-industrial society had witnessed a number of political changes. There was an emergence of new political ideas which stressed on the rights and the privileges of the common man. So during this time, there was a change in the political ideas. Earlier, it was more of dictatorship. Now, in the post-industrial age, the people began to realize that it is not only the king and the nobles who need to have all the rights, but it was also the common man who had to have his or her own rights. Writings of the French authors like Montesquieu, Rousseau, and Voltaire had resulted in the French Revolution, which is considered as a major event in world history. Even in colonial India means India when it was ruled by the British. The writings of a number of nationalistic leaders like Tilak, Savarkar, Rajaram Mohan Roy, Mahatma Gandhi, and many others had kept the flames of nationalism burn in the minds of the Indians. This intellectual awakening had brought about the nationalistic movement in Asia and Africa. These major changes that came up in the post-industrial age resulted in a society which was totally different from the societies of the ancient and the medieval ages. The post-industrial age was a society that had recognized the rights and the privileges of every person irrespective of his political, social, or economic status. That means during this time, that is the post-industrial age, the common people got their rights, whether they were rich, they were poor, whether they belonged to a high class or a low class, the rights were equal for all. This period marked the beginning of the modern age. Thank you, students.